Okay, welcome to the Overtly Critical Film Show. I'm Ryan, and that's
Hi, I'm Corwin.
That's Corwin, and it's not a podcast, by the way. It's a show.
It's not a podcast. We are legally distinct from a podcast.
And there's a difference because everyone has a podcast nowadays. Nobody has shows anymore. Like the Amanda Show. The Amanda Show is a great show. Anyway, so we're film students, and I kind of just realized that every time I watch a movie, I'm essentially like studying whether I even know it or not. So I was like, why don't I do a show where we take a new film that at least one of us hadn't seen before, and we kind of try to turn it into like an educational experience. So every week the goal is that we're going to watch a movie that's fresh to at least one of us, and we're going to try to learn something from it, at least one thing we can learn from it, and but everyone watching also gets to learn. So
that's very well said, Ryan. And for our first week, we are watching the movie Falling Down, which is directed by Joel Schumacher and starring... who is it starring, Ryan?
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas.
Because you didn't remember that.
No, I remember the name. I know the actor. He's a great actor. I just couldn't remember the name because my mind is a garbage can and doesn't retain anything I want it to.
The only thing I knew Michael Douglas from is... I think he was the guy in Wall Street that said, "Greed is good."
Yeah, he's Gordon Gekko, and he's in the Ant-Man movies.
So, oh right,
yeah.
Oh my God, he's
best part of those movies, in my opinion.
I totally forgot that was him. Anyway, so this movie, Falling Down, I picked this movie, and every week, by the way, we're alternating what movie we pick for whatever reason. And I picked this movie because I'd heard a little bit about it, and I was like, okay, we'll see what this is like. And I guess the basic plot of the movie is like he's a laid off defense worker. In fact, actually, we do learn what his name is, but for most of the movie, he's just referred to as Defense because
we see his license plate near the start of the movie, and it's just his Defense.
And so he's laid off, which we don't actually see any of that, but we hear about it later. And
full disclosure here, this is a full-on spoiler review. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. It's amazing.
And basically, he just has the worst day imaginable. Basically, everything that can go wrong for this guy does. And I think what kind of distinguishes this movie from just being that is that, because everyone's just had a bad day before, but he retaliates to everything. And I think that's what makes it interesting because, everybody's had an experience at like a fast food restaurant that pisses them off, but very few people take out a gun and try to shoot everybody or at least threaten everybody. But that's the basic plot of the movie. So when the credits rolled, what were like the first things that you thought, like right away?
So the movie opens with what I think is the best scene of the movie, which is just this classic LA traffic jam. It is just literally no space between the cars, not a single car is moving, and for most of the movie there's this hazy sort of orange color, and you just really get this oppressive hot feeling. It's a hot day. They say that in the movie in like the climax that sure was hot today, wasn't it? And that's that opening sequence in the cars. You just really it's like it's hell. You are just put right into the perspective of the main character, and there's this great like bit where they're like cutting between this fly that is like shot to like be an extreme close-up, makes it look huge right on his neck, and then like kids in a bus throwing stuff out on the street, and he loses it, and it's like just you already sympathize with him before knowing anything about him.
That shot that was felt very closed off. There was a lot of shots like that, but no, that was a good opening scene. And I think in a more macro thing, the one thing I thought when the movie ended was it went a lot deeper than I thought it would.
Elaborate on that?
I feel like the movie was trying to say a lot of things, or it could potentially be about a lot of things. Basically, the whole movie is him going around criticizing everybody and everything. It's like the world versus him. Like the golf course is like a waste of space, and it's a waste of everyone's time. Everything's overpriced. One thing that I noticed in a lot of those things that I wrote down here is that there's a lot of very blatant shots of the American flag in this movie. I don't know if that has any significance.
Oh, absolutely.
But
it is.
I mean, especially in the I guess we can go back to the opening when he goes to the store, the Korean store, and he complains about the Coke being overpriced and everything like that. When he knocks the guy over, and the whole that display falls over, a big pile of American flags fall, and they just show that, and I was like, there's gotta be a reason for that. And then because later in the movie, fast forward when he's with the Nazi, they also show an American flag in there. And I think the point they were getting at is like it can kind of mean anything you want it to mean or something like that. Or
this movie, in my opinion, it's very critical of just our society, or well, I guess the society of the 90s, but it's very applicable to modern day society because I think basically we are the same society as we were about 20, 30 years ago. And what we have is our main character is, at least as he appears at the beginning, and he pretty much is your basic kind of just white middle class guy. He works an office job. He comes from like a family with some like military background. He works as a defense contractor, and we basically have a guy who becomes, especially by the end of the movie, completely disillusioned with his society, and he is just really, he's rebelling against it in some unhealthy ways. Did he fall down that pit because he's mentally unstable, or did he become mentally unstable and then he fell down that pit?
You know, so this movie, in my opinion, it's kind of like a genre of movie. Now, there's a million movies that are like a character versus the man kind of thing. But this movie, at the end of it, I was like, this is pretty much just a less fictionalized Joker. Because this movie and that movie are very much the same, where it's less about the character in the movie and it's more about what the world around them does to them. And to get to another similarity in that, the beginning of the movie, he's in traffic, but we know he doesn't have a job. So why is he dressed up in work attire? Why does he have a suitcase? Was that all like is he going through like motions of his life like a fantasy? Like in the end of the movie, he's like, oh, my family. It's like, dude, you've been divorced.
It becomes very clear by I think it's most of it's revealed when the detective, who is honestly more of the protagonist, it's kind of a dual protagonist situation with I don't remember the name of the detective.
Oh Christ, his name right here.
Pendergast. His name was Pendergast. I remembered it because I thought about he's got the letters on his desk. Pendergast is sort of more the protagonist, and when he and his sort of ex-partner, go to Defen's house, and we see his house, and that's when we find out that he was unemployed, and he's been living there for a while, and he's like just silent as he eats, and it really paints this picture that he really is not all right in the head, and it's not so much a case of just a normal guy having a bad day, which is sort of what you're led to believe at the beginning. And they drop these hints like where he it's played off for comedy when he gives the homeless beggar asking for just anything his briefcase, and all that's in it is like lunch, and it's sort of like played for laughs. But by that point we realize, oh, nothing's in there because he doesn't work a job anymore and he's freaking crazy. One
thing that I noticed when they were talking about it, like, oh, it's a white guy in a white shirt. Okay, thanks, that's helpful. And then the next thing that happens, it's a white guy in a white shirt. So the thing that I gathered from it is maybe there's also some disassociation going on where he's like, I'm just another guy, another white guy in a white shirt. I got a tinge, which is also interesting. I got a lot of like weird tinges of like left-wing themes, but also some libertarian stuff and some it was kind of all over the place. But like that's one of the things I was like, is this movie like making white people victims?
It's got there was a few parts where I kind of felt like this movie is maybe it's racist, but like just the way it kind of portrayed the Latino gangsters, which I mean, on one case there were some people like that. On the other case, is that right to have those as the only Latino characters in your film? But it's not. I mean, this is the perspective of a white guy, so I thought it was okay. Other people might think it's not. But
well, the cop's assistant's a
Latino. True, she is. This movie is definitely making a point about like white America, because Defense, he's racist. He definitely is racist. He, especially like in that first like where he really starts to lose it in the store with the Korean man, he is like saying some pretty racist shit to him. It's just this idea of like he feels entitled. He very much feels entitled to this life that he has, and he feels like he's better than people. And I think what breaks in his head is that he feels superior. He feels like he's supposed to be doing well in his life because he's, as he says, did everything they told me. and he's not doing well. He doesn't have what he wants, and he breaks, so he decides to like basically take it by force. And there's that great scene where he's talking to the neo-Nazi in the military store, which is just terrifying. I don't want to ever meet a person like that. That's just scared the crap out of me. He says, we're the same, you're like me. And Defense is like, no, I'm not like you. It's like, you kind of are. A person who thinks they're supposed to be the greatest on earth and isn't, and they're upset and they blame the system and people around them for not being great. There's some white supremacist parallels with that and the racist comments he makes.
The reason why he said he's not the same as the Nazis, because he never intended to do any of that. He had no political motivation behind it. Defense in this movie, he wasn't trying to like start a big crime thing so that he could recruit the neo-Nazis or whatever.
Oh no, I don't think so at all.
He didn't attach any meaning to what he was doing other than himself. So obviously there is racism in what he said to the Korean guy, but I think it's more or less just angry at everybody and finding any reason to express it and say it. So that's kind of how I took that. Another interesting thing that I found in all of this is I think he recognizes the loss of like human element and stuff. He's like, okay, I'm going to come to your store. I need some change. And he's like, you have to buy something if you want to get change. He's like, why can't you just be a human and give me change because I need change? Why does this store business thing have to make you change your behavior, right? Why do you have to play on a fancy fucking golf course when people could be doing other things here? I can't walk across this road. Why? Just because you say so? So I think he also has this kind of feeling like a disassociation with literally everything.
He is very much in denial, in my opinion, about his own mental health and his own state of life, especially by the end of the movie where he's like totally gone off the rails. I really liked the dialogue in this movie. It felt to me there's a really hard balanced hit when writing dialogue of making something dramatic and interesting but also feel realistic and believable. And there's scenes where it's very like sort of monologue-y and not really Shakespearean but very theatrical, like at the end where he's like talking about like, I'm the bad guy. But there's also that scene where the cops first come to his ex-wife's house and they have the line about like the judge, and it's like just a misunderstanding. It's got no bearing on the plot, but it's just like little details that make you immerse in this world. It's like, yeah, that's how people talk.
Another really interesting detail about this movie, it's one day. The whole movie, every crazy event that happens in this movie takes place over, probably more specifically, probably like 8 hours or something. Great, because I feel like a lot of times movies make us forget just how jam-packed a single day can be.
Oh, yeah.
I think that makes this movie kind of special because, like, you can have like a bad week. Okay, so what? But he had all this stuff happen to him in one day, and it made it feel a lot more real in that aspect.
I love how they use the cop's last day, so close to retirement trope, as they subvert it, but they also use it to its full dramatic effect, because they're setting up from like the first scene with Pendergast, like, it's his last day as a cop, don't get shot, and like people are playing it off as a joke, and Pendergast's wife is terrified of it, and Pendergast is definitely a bit scared of it too. And by the end, I genuinely was like not sure if he was going to die or not. I wasn't sure where the movie was going.
Yeah, I thought that Defense was going to kill him.
Yeah, I thought it could happen that way. I genuinely didn't know. And it's just they use the trope so well because, if they had just set it up and played it straight, it would have been kind of boring, but they also get that tension from that trope and then subvert it at the end to make it dramatic and more interesting. I really liked that they did that.
I really sympathize with this character for a lot of the movie, but in certain ways, like everybody that goes to McDonald's and has to deal with their bullshit rules, they probably want to pull out a gun and shoot everybody. We usually just like turn up our chins and just say whatever. But there's certainly moments where everyone has a day like that, and I think that the situations that he's into are very relatable. And just kind of the way that he walks around, and he has like a criticism of everything. Yeah. And a lot of the things that he criticizes, I absolutely agree with. Again, I don't agree with how he handled the Korean guy, but he's absolutely right that everyone's price gouged everywhere. Golf courses are bullshit and unnecessary. I can really sympathize with a lot of the things that he said in the movie. It's like he's very much a rule breaker, doesn't want to subscribe to any rules or anything that anybody gives him, and when he has to, he kind of does it. He's very resistant to it. He's gonna call out the bullshit when he sees it, and I resonated with that a lot.
He's a really well written character in the sense that you can totally relate to him, but you can also be terrified of him. Like he's like at that right before the final scene where he's like calling his wife, and then she runs out of the house when she finds out how close he is. That's scary.
Yeah.
And like when he's watching, like obsessively watching the home videos, and you see even how he's acting in the home videos, he is scary and relatable, and it really just it's just great writing. It really is.
I mean, that's why Joker's so good. You know,
a great performance
I can
on Michael Douglas's part.
Right. I mean, I can disagree with everything Joker did in the movie. I can disagree with him killing the privileged rich guys in the subway and everything else. But it still doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, he's just bad guy. He's bad guy. He has nothing to him. You know. In this movie, you definitely, you know, you're sad to see him die in the end, but it's also like that kind of had to happen. I mean,
does Defense actually, aside from the neo-Nazi, who else does he kill in the movie? I don't think he actually kills anyone aside from the neo-Nazi, because he shoots the guy in the leg when they crash, and he beats some guys up, and he does some messed up things, and he shoots the rocket launcher and it blows up, but we don't see anyone die. He doesn't even try and kill the cop at the end, really.
Because he brought a squirt gun.
Your monitor shut off. Uh-oh.
Good time for the intermission.
We're
moving on, and it's time for trivia with our good mascot, Super 8.
Michael Douglas considers this his favorite performance of all the movies he has been in. At the time of its release, Michael Douglas's father, Kirk, considered this to be his son's best performance. Every studio in Hollywood turned down Ebro Smith's script. Producer Arnold Culpson was getting to the stage of considering cable television when Michael Douglas came across the script. Detective Brian, or Steve Park, says that he can't translate for Mr. Lee, played by Michael Paul Chan, because he is Japanese and Mr. Lee is Korean. In real life, Park is South Korean and Chan is Chinese. The man who is yelling about being not economically viable in front of the bank is wearing the same clothing as Foster. Even the tie pattern is the same. Iron Maiden's song, Man on the Edge, is based on this movie. The Foo Fighters' music video for their song Walk is inspired by and mimics the movie. The opening sequence of the film, in which Foster is stuck in traffic, is a direct homage to Federico Fellini's famous opening to 8½ from 1963.
I have funny notes. I'm reading them. The best part of the movie was the girl versus dog scenes. Every time they came up, I just saw the girl, I saw the dog, and I was like, holy shit, what's gonna happen next? I was very concerned when the main character started whispering sweet nothings into a cold Coke can. We found out that girl has a gun. This shows how much this American society loves to give children guns. And you know what the girl did with the gun? She fucking shot the dog. Like, what the hell? She's just over there going, shooting the dog. This girl has no remorse. She's basically as bad as her dad. And then I have in quotes, guard dog, because he's just such a good boy. Honestly, the dog didn't need to do anything else in the movie. He deserved a break after getting shot at. Anyway, Santa hearts Nazis. Pretty simple. Don't need any explanation there. Funny notes are done. Make sure to always look at funny notes.
Okay, we are reconvening from our little intermission there, and we're going to get to our final thoughts on the movie. And at the end, we're going to try to say the one thing that we think we learned from it, or kind of the takeaway, the one thing that it did the best. There's a shot in where he's kind of like, one thing too is like, you know, how he's critical of everything. He's kind of like an observer of everything. And we saw that too in the traffic scene. But he's standing around the city, and some guy's holding up a sign, and it's like, you know, hungry, you know, would work for food. And then the shot changes focus, because in front of him walks a guy that's selling.
With the bank. The bank.
No, this is different too.
Is it?
This guy has a giant bag of peanuts. There's a hungry guy right there, but then there's a guy right in front of him selling peanuts. You can see that he's like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
What the fuck's going on?
Honestly, my favorite moment, I think, is... Well, I already talked about how much I liked the opening of the movie, but I really, got hit by the home video scene. That is just it, where we go inside his head, and you see he's got a lot of complex thoughts as he's watching what he wants, but he also, there's bits where he can kind of see how much of kind of an ass he was. How he can I think he has some moments of seeing of maybe he doesn't quite get it, that it was his own fault that he lost his wife.
Put her on the horse. Yeah. You know, another thing, I don't want to interrupt your point here, but one of the things he talks about being he just wants a normal life. You know, I just go to work and then I just do everything they tell me to and blah blah. And I think that's another weird thing. I think he has this feeling I have a wife and a kid. My kid's supposed to be playing on a rocking horse, so he needs it to be that way. Yep. Something like that I thought about too, but
and that gets back to that whole idea of this expectation of white suburban America of how life is supposed to be, and this will make you happy, and it doesn't, and it's not how life is, and just getting wrecked by that. Something I really like in this movie is it does some great setup and payoff, which I think the best example that it does in the movie of setup and payoff is the water gun and the detective's gun. Because the first scene Pendergast is in, he has to give his gun away because he's going to retire that day, and then when he's going into the to go face defense in his wife's house, he reaches for his gun and sees there's no gun there, and it's just he freaks out. It's uh-oh. That's a good moment. And then also with the water gun, we're seeing the kid playing with it for the whole movie, and then it's at the end of the movie, after defense gets shot by Pendergast, he reveals all he had left was the water gun, and the cop wasn't in any danger, and that defense was trying to get killed. Good. The idea in script writing, setup and payoff, setting up a plot point early on, so it's in the audience's head, so that when you show it off later, it's oh yeah, that thing. It's satisfying for the audience from their perspective, right. And that's just some great stuff you can learn from this movie. Yeah. They do it really well.
And so I think my one takeaway from this, and I kind of referred to this a little bit earlier, the fact that the movie takes place in one day, it makes the world feel a lot bigger, but it also makes it feel really grounded in a lot of ways where this, sometimes for me, this blurs the line of being a documentary. It almost feels like it could be real. I could be in any of these situations. I could have been in that fast food place when he went in there. I could have been the guy complaining about the stupid breakfast menu. Not only the way it's shot, just kind of a lot of the gritty sidewalks and just a lot of the infrastructure of the city, and the dialogue, I guess, plays into that. But just the situations, the scenarios, and especially the fact that it takes place in one day, that time frame, it makes it feel a lot more immersive to me. So I think the one takeaway I have from this is definitely play with the time frame of your movie. Like I said, if this was a bad week, it wouldn't have the same impact as the normal work day. Everything in this movie happens. So I think knowing that the time that your movie takes place in is important.
It also really speaks to the pacing of the film. It is
right. They kill it though.
Really well paced.
I would recommend watching the movie.
Yeah, I really have nothing to criticize it about. There was no moments that jumped out at me saying that wasn't so good. Maybe they should have done another way. It's great.
So next week we are going to be looking at a movie that I could talk about literally forever, and I could probably watch a million times, and that's Memento. Very excited to talk about that. I'm very excited for you to see it.
I'm very excited to see it as well because I love Christopher Nolan's work. Interstellar is one of my favorite movies of all time, and everyone keeps saying that I should watch it, and I just have never gotten the chance.
I'm excited to watch it again. So go see Falling Down. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two from it. I certainly did, and I had a good time watching it. Stay tuned to next week. And big thanks to Super 8. That's Corwin. I'm Ryan. Cool. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.